Well, sounds like another quiet group of people again tonight.
Yeah. It looks good.
Well, there's no Brewer game tonight. That's good.
Yeah, that's true. That means we won't lose a bunch of people.
Otherwise, we'd have nobody here.
Well, I got to admit, I'd probably be here.
I would be here too.
I'm not a. I watch. I pay attention to the Brewers, but I don't follow baseball. Not one of my big things.
I only
I'm
care
more
that
into
they beat the
football.
Cubs. After that, I don't really care anymore.
Yeah.
Great satisfaction in that.
Although I'll probably get kicked out of the Illinois Camera Club I go to next week if they win. But that's all right. Come out to flat tires or something.
Yeah. Oh, Elizabeth, you want me just to start and with
Yes.
all this?
Yes. Yes, I'll be right back. But sorry.
Okay.
All right. You all hear the dog barking? Is there something where I can change that? So you know, like a noise canceling something?
No, the noise canceling doesn't quite work that well.
Oh, it works.
I
great
know because I
indeed.
got a dog and a cat that do the same thing.
Okay, sorry. Well, sorry ahead of time because she's gonna bark, I'm sure, but I'll mute myself. All right.
All right, well, we'll get started here. It's 7 o'clock. Yeah, we got 28 people in, so that we're pretty good. All right, welcome everybody to Menomonee Falls Camera Club. Tonight we have a guest speaker of Ian Plant. Ian is an internationally recognized nature, landscape, and wildlife photographer, known for exploring some of the planet's most remote and dramatic locations. He creates images that celebrate light, color, and the spirit of wild places. Through his travels, teaching, and publications, Ian inspires others to see the natural world with fresh eyes and a deeper appreciation. Tonight, oh, my mind's gone blank, Ian. What's the title? It's a curiosity.
Making a connection. I'm talking about
Making a connection.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. Let me replace the spotlight with you. Thank you, Ian, for coming. We're all looking forward to your talk tonight.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. And thank you, ChatGPT, for writing that very excellent introduction. I know
I'll
you're
send
secret
that
now.
to you one of these days.
Yeah, definitely send it to me. I love it. It's so much better than what I came up with. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm going to be talking about the art of storytelling. My cats are probably going to help.
Yep.
Sorry about that. They're happy. I've been traveling, and my wife was out of town, so they're happy that I'm home.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I picked up a really nasty cold while I was away, and so I'm going to do my very best to power through. But it's been pretty bad today. So
Okay,
if I'm not firing on all cylinders, if I'm not as funny and as charming and as handsome as I normally am, that's why. So,
No problem.
okay, fantastic. Good to hear. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah.
And we'll get started with the presentation. And just hold on a second. Let me close out a few things here. And all right, ready to go. Okay, so what I'm talking about making a connection, which is engaging the viewer's interest by telling a story with your photographs. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them at any time. Jeffrey, if you can monitor the questions coming into the chat,
Right.
maybe people can put them into the chat. If they're relevant to what I'm talking about in the moment, feel free to interrupt, and then we can do some Q&A at the end. And what follows are just some of my favorite techniques for capturing artistic photographs. But I talk about the art of photography a lot, and you can learn more on my photo education platform, which is photomasters.com, where I've got a free webinar that's got even more information if you want to follow up on some of the techniques I talk about tonight. And I just sent a link in the chat to that free webinar if folks want to check that out. And so everyone, everything, every place, every moment has a story. And your job as a photographer is to find those stories and share them with the world. So it's often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I think you can't just take a picture and hope that it will be worth 1,000 words. You, as the photographer, as the artist, need to make your photos worth 1,000 words. And you do that by telling a story. And it's really enough to invite the curiosity of the viewer to find their own story. You don't have to construct a story for them and make them see that story. You just got to trigger that curiosity. And I think that artistic photos are made when one goes past doing mere documentary photography. It's when you impose your own artistic vision on the subject and you are creative with the use of composition, light, mood, and capturing the magic of the moment. And a good photo should tell viewers as much about you as an artist as it does about your subject. So I just want to share some images where I'm to kind of illustrate this idea of telling a story. So this first photo is of a cheetah, nice, good lighting on the cheetah's face. I had a nice clean background. And I use selective focus and a wide open aperture so the background is really artistically blurred. I think most people would be happy with a photo like this, but I'm not really that interested in making photos like that. I want to use light and composition more creatively, and I want my photos to tell more of a story. I want to move beyond just taking snapshots, instead starting to make artistic photos. And so the first photo I showed you is a nice clean portrait, but there's no story there. There's really nothing more. And I think it fails to make a connection. It's kind of sterile and it looks like it could have been photographed anywhere. It could have been photographed in a zoo. So it's not really doing the job as a photograph to make that connection with the viewer. And so as we go deeper into this series of the photos of cheetahs, you can see that I'm engaged more in that storytelling process. So with this photo, I took a wider view. So the cheetah is in the distance on a termite mound. And I went wider so I could bring in a lot of the savanna grass and also to bring in a lot of the sky. And there's this one storm cloud that's kind of passing in the background. And I waited for that to be behind the cheetah for this photo. And so this is more of what you would call an environmental portrait. And the wider angle of view is allowing me to get more creative with the visual design. So I've got some out of focus grass in the foreground that's giving the photo some depth. And then including a lot of the grass in the sky is creating some color contrast, that warm grass with the cool tones in the sky. And this is showing more of the environment that the cheetah lives in. And so the cheetahs get up on these termite mounds so that they can look for prey. And so by showing this broader expanse, it kind of shows you what the cheetah's up against on a daily basis. How challenging it is to find something to hunt in this vast landscape. And so that was the story I was trying to tell here. With this photo, it's another tight portrait of a cheetah, kind of similar to the first photo, but I'm much more creative with the use of light here. And so the light's coming from the side. So one side of the cheetah's face is in the shadow. And so there's a lot of darkness and a lot of shadow in this photo that contrasts with the sunlit areas. I took this photo at sunrise, so there's this golden light on the cheetah. And so the look on the cheetah's face is also much more dynamic. So I think that this is more creative and it tells a more interesting story than that first photo. And here, the cheetah is rendered in a much more abstract way. I was shooting into the sunrise, and so the limited dynamic range of the camera means that the shadowed areas don't have much detail. And so they're rendered black. They're rendered in silhouette. And so you really just see the shape of the cheetah as it's climbing the tree here. But I think that element of abstraction actually helps enhance the story. It kind of adds a little bit of mystery to the photo. And so I think this is a much more interesting story than that first photo I showed. And so I think those photos illustrate kind of what I'm talking about. But I'm going to drill deeper into this idea of telling a story. And one question I often get asked by people is, does every photo need to tell a story? And my answer is yes, every photo needs to tell a story. But my definition of telling a story is perhaps a bit broader. Because obviously there's certain types of photos, if you're doing certain abstract photos or close-ups or macro, it might not be so obvious what the story is for photos like that. But when I'm talking about telling a story, what I'm really talking about is making a connection with the viewer. So triggering a response, whether it's an emotional response or just a visceral visual response. I'm talking about inciting their curiosity, getting them to look deeper at the photo that you've created. And so I'm not talking very narrowly about storytelling. I've got this broader definition of storytelling. Storytelling is really just about making that connection with the viewer and, drawing their interest in, holding their interest, forcing them to study your photo more closely. And another question is, does the story that you're telling with your photographs have to be the real story? And the truth is, every photo has multiple stories that it offers to the viewer. So there's the real story, the real thing that was happening when you took the photo. Then there may be the story that you're trying to tell as an artist. And that story is manipulated through the photographic process. It's filtered through your choice of equipment, what your focal length is, what your camera settings are. And so the story that you're telling through your photo may not be exactly aligned with the real story. And then there's another story, which is actually potentially hundreds, thousands, or millions of stories, depending on how many people look at your photo. It's the story that each viewer comes up with on their own. They're not necessarily going to understand the real story, or they're not necessarily going to understand the story that you're trying to tell them. They might come up with their own story. And I think that's the key thing. If you really want to trigger their curiosity and to get them engaged in the storytelling process. So if each viewer comes up with a different story, that's fine. The key thing is that they're curious enough to come up with a story. So you don't have to force them to see the story that you want. Instead, what I try to do with my photos is just to inject enough story cues or enough mystery in the photos so that the viewer starts doing the storytelling process on their own. So here's an example. This is a photograph of a cheetah that was on a termite mound, letting out a mighty roar. Okay, you got me. It wasn't really a mighty roar, it was a mighty yawn. But I've photographed a lot of big cats, and I've seen big cats roar, and the roars don't look that exciting. The yawns look very exciting. They're very dynamic. You can see lots of teeth. And I think that the yawn tells a more interesting story than the roar. And so when I show these photos to people, I want them to think it's a roar. The people who actually do big cat photography know that it's a yawn, but the average person probably sees a photo like this and thinks that the animal's roaring, and that's fine. I'm okay with them coming away with that story. That's kind of what I'm going for. So, I'm taking something that's a bit more dynamic than, visually dynamic. Even though a roar is more exciting than a yawn, the yawn is more visually dynamic. So that's what I'm going with. And it's okay that my photo isn't really telling the real story. And so here's another example. You go out and you're exploring and you find, this is not a very good photo. It's just an old photo in my archives of flowering dogwood. You go out and you find this beautiful dogwood and you zoom in tight and you take a picture of it. By making those choices, selecting a very tight framing, by zooming in with a longer lens, you can exclude the rest of the scene. You don't have to tell the viewer that you found that flowering dogwood on the edge of a trash dump. You can be selective with your choices and exclude that from the viewer's inspection. So it's okay to distort the story through the photographic process. And so when you're looking for stories out there, you might be tempted to try to find the people, places, and things that tell the most interesting stories. The people, for example, that wear their stories on their sleeves. And that's certainly one approach to photography is just to go out and find the most interesting stuff that you possibly can. And so here's an example of that. This is a photo I made one day wandering around my hometown of Minneapolis, and I was doing some street photography, and I had no idea that it was National Naked Bike Ride Day or something like that. I didn't even know that this was a thing, but apparently every day all around the world, people go out and they ride their bikes naked. The good thing was they were only mostly naked. I don't think I saw any fully naked people. Riding a bike fully naked is rather uncomfortable, I can imagine.
I would think.
And so it was a pretty interesting event. And as I was aiming my camera at the crowd, I saw this one guy, with this brilliant, Viking red beard and these colorful sunglasses. And so I pointed my camera at him. I knew he was telling the most interesting story, and he saw me point my camera at him, and he gave me this mighty bellow. He just goes ah, holds his hand out, and he was the right guy. He was wearing his story on his sleeve. This guy's got lots of color and personality. He was a perfect person to tell a story in a photograph. But a lot of times when you're making photos, you're just going to be dealing with everyday average people or places or subjects. And it might take a little bit more work to tell their story. And so a good photographer learns how to tell a story no matter what the subject is. Sometimes you got to tease out the story, when you're working with people. Sometimes you've got to make them a bit more comfortable so that they, their story comes out. And so this was a pair of boys in the Congo. I was there doing photographing mountain gorillas, and I encountered these boys on the way to where the gorillas were. And they were good spirits. They I kind of joked around with them a little bit, and then they posed for me. And it took a little while for them to get comfortable and smile and tell their story. And the photographer should be willing to engage with the subject to make the story what they want it to be. So for me, like I liked their sense of humor. I liked the fact that the taller boy on the right was very gregarious and funny. The boy on the left was a bit more shy, but the two of them were good friends, or maybe brothers. I'm not sure which they were. And so just, it took a little while to get them to work together to get the story. But what I really liked about it was visually the two boys kind of leaning in to one another. They're forming this abstract triangle shape, and that triangle is mirrored by the volcano in the background. So bringing those two visual elements together was a great way of enhancing the storytelling process. Showing where they lived and making the image a little bit more visually exciting. So what does it really mean to tell a story? So telling a story is, I think, more obvious, more intuitive when you're photographing people or wildlife, because people will do things that immediately tell us a story. If you see someone smiling, you know that they're happy or they're having a good time. You see someone frowning, you know that they're unhappy. And with wildlife, wildlife subjects might share some of our kind of a primitive version of our emotions. A lot of times they might not be showing that same emotion, but they look like they are. They might strike what I call a relatable pose. And so, a bear might look like it's bored or look like it's having a lot of fun. Whether it's bored or having fun, you might not really know, but they kind of look like a person would look when they're doing those things. And so it's kind of easy to tell a story with wildlife and with people. But, how do you tell a story of a landscape scene or of a building if you're doing architecture photography? So different approaches are required for different subjects to tease out that story. And so I like to think of storytelling in photography as inviting the viewer to participate in the scene or the subject that you're photographing, to participate in the story. So how do you invite the viewer in? Well, you can use what I call story cues. These are visual elements that illustrate a story. For example, if you're photographing someone who is religious and you want to tell the story of their religion, if they're holding up a Bible or something like that, that might be a story cue that indicates that part of the story. So that's what story cues are. And then I like to add a healthy dose of mystery to a lot of my photos. And these are visual elements that arouse curiosity. And I'll talk more about all these a little bit later. And then there's something I call proxies, which are visual elements that serve as a stand-in for the viewer's perspective. Like putting a person in the photo, like, let's say you're a landscape photographer and you put a person in the landscape, that person can be a proxy for the viewer. It invites the viewer to take that point of view. And so some examples of these include things like line of sight and eye contact when you're photographing people and wildlife. Eye contact can be very powerful. It can trigger an immediate reaction from the viewer. Line of sight, when people see a person or an animal looking a certain way, we're kind of biologically programmed to follow that line of sight. Just imagine primitive humans walking on the savannah and someone suddenly stops and starts looking at something intently. It's a good idea to look in that direction because they're probably looking at something that's either food or that thinks we are food. And so line of sight is something that can be very powerful in your photographs. I mentioned relatable poses earlier. So for example, this Thomas's leaf monkey from Indonesia, he looks like he's just sort of chilling out, like he's relaxing, just kind of having a good old time. His pose looks very human-like, and so that helps tell a story. Atmospherics and visual screens. So atmospherics are weather events like fog, for example. That's a really good example of an atmospheric. And visual screens are something that you have in between you and the subject. So I like photographing my wildlife subjects, for example, if I have some leaves that are in between me, close to the lens, in between me and the subject. And so sometimes I'll find a gap in those leaves and shoot through just to create a more mysterious presentation. Talked about putting a person in the landscape. And then implied motion, direction, and energy can be another great way of telling a story. And so all of these are effective invitations to participate. And so let me just go through a few series of photos where I show you how I started and then what happened when I started thinking more critically about the storytelling process. So this is a photo of the very first wild elephant that I photographed in Africa. This was in Namibia. And it was a super exciting experience when I saw my first elephant. This big, massive beast lumbering towards me. It's kind of like that scene from the original Jurassic Park movie when they first encounter the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And they don't see it at first, they just hear the ground shaking. And there's a glass of water in the car that starts shimmering when the T-Rex is stomping on the ground. And then you see the T-Rex and your heart is beating wild. If you saw it in the theaters in particular, it was a pretty amazing scene. That's how I felt when I saw my first elephant. I was like, oh, wow, this is just like the T-Rex scene in Jurassic Park. So I took a bunch of photos, and this is one of those photos. And it's really not a very good photo. It's not bad, right? It's, sharply focused, but there's no storytelling. There's nothing interesting going on in this photo. As I started to make more photos and started to pay attention more to the storytelling process, you can see the evolution, waiting for those interesting moments. So here, one of the elephants is giving itself a dust bath, and I triggered the shutter when that dust was flying over the elephant and kind of had this more really distinctive curving shape to help tell the story here. And here I'm using the light and the dust that the elephants are kicking off the ground. So here the elephants are coming in to a water hole at sunset. And so I selected a position so that the dust that they were kicking up would be backlit. And so getting more creative with the composition and the use of light to tell a more interesting story. And here, the elephants virtually disappear. So these are the same three elephants from the previous photo passing by a water hole at sunset. And because I was shooting into the light, I dropped my exposure to make sure I wasn't overexposing the sky at all. And as a result, the landscape itself and the three elephants that were walking past over the landscape, they all disappear. They go into silhouette. All you can see is their reflections in the water. So it's a very abstract rendering, but it's much more evocative. It's much more mysterious. And it causes the viewer to take a moment to figure out what's going on. And so that mystery that I've injected into this photo by being creative with my exposure and letting most of the scene fall into silhouette. That's something that's going to engage the viewer's interest. It's going to take them a while to figure out what's going on. There's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance because the reflected scene looks different from the sunset sky you can see above. And I think that's more likely to trigger something with the viewer and hold their interest over time. And here's another series. These are Sumatran orangutans in Indonesia. And this is a big male. And I took a nice tight portrait of him. And I actually like this photo a lot. It's very engaging. That eye contact is very powerful. And I love the rich colors of this orangutan. But I don't think this photo beyond that, I don't think it tells a very interesting story. And frankly, there's no sense of place. There's no wildness to this photo. It could have been taken in a zoo. And so here are some other photos that I've taken of orangutans that I think start to tell more of a story. So you can see that, one difference, one thing that I do when I'm telling a story is I start zooming out rather than zooming in. So I'm not taking a very narrow selective view. When I want to tell a story, I'm going wider and bringing in more of the surrounding scene. And so here, I like the relatable pose of the mother. So the infant is goofing off and the mother is rolling her eyes. She's not really rolling her eyes, but it kind of looks like that. That might be a story that someone draws from this. And you can see more of the environment. Excuse me. This photo, very dynamic and a much more fun story. So this is an infant orangutan that was swinging back and forth on a vine, and he was being a cheeky little monkey, very playful. And so as he was swinging back and forth, I decided to pan the camera with the motion of the infant and use a relatively long exposure. It was 1/30th of a second. And that I knew would blur the background. And then I used some fill flash to illuminate just the infant because I knew that the fill flash would actually freeze the motion of the infant during that long exposure. So you get the mix of the static capture of the infant, but then the blur in the background. So it's a really dynamic pose. The infant's got this great, look on his face. He's definitely having a grand old time. And I think that story comes through. And then with the blur that creates these like motion lines, basically. It's like a cartoon where they show like, Superman's flying and they've got the little lines behind Superman to indicate that he's moving in one direction. It's the same sort of thing, same sort of effect with this photo, with the blur from the panning of the camera. And as a result, this is a much more interesting story than the very first photo. And, here's another photo of orangutans that I really like because I feel like it really tells a nice story. It's not as dynamic and bold as the previous image. Here, the mother is swinging by the scene with her infant. And, there's a few things that I really like about this. The bold color contrast between the orange fur of the orangutans and the green of the rainforest around them. And, there's some implied motion, the direction that the mother is moving in, her line of sight is implying motion from right to left. And then the eye contact from the infant just really pulls the eye back to that spot. And I think that is very engaging. And so, I like using eye contact with wildlife. I'm not as big of a fan with it with people because when you have a person making eye contact with the camera, it looks more like just a casual snapshot that people take all the time. And so I like working with line of sight that's directed elsewhere when I'm working with people. But with wildlife, having that eye contact can be very engaging. It just creates an immediate connection with the viewer. And here's another photo that I really like because I think it really tells a nice story. And here you can't see the eyes of the infant. This infant is clinging to its mother. And actually, this is a Bornean orangutan from Borneo. And so different species of orangutan. And so with this, I've got a few photos where the infant's making eye contact with me, but I like this one better where the infant's got its face buried in its mother's fur. I think it just tells a much more interesting story and gives this photo an abstract quality. And so here's another series with polar bears. And so here's, just kind of what I would call the back pocket shot. You know, like when you go out and you're making photos of wildlife, you want to get a really good shot, you know, just of the wildlife. And and once you've got that nice portrait of the animal, then you can start getting more creative. So I call this the back pocket shot because once you get a photo like this in your back pocket, then you're ready to push the envelope creatively. And so, yeah, this is just a pretty simple portrait of a polar bear looking right at me. I did do a little bit of storytelling here. So the storytelling that comes through is the eye contact, you know, the very intent glare from the polar bear looking straight at the camera. And also my choice of white balance. So I just kind of shifted this to a slightly cool white balance. And I wanted to bring in that cool blue, very subtle tint of blue, just to give this image a more forlorn look. You know, because the high Arctic where these bears live is this empty, bleak landscape, very dramatic and challenging landscape to live in. And so I wanted to convey a little bit of that mood. So a little bit of blue makes this look a bit more bleak. But as you can see, after I got that back pocket shot, I started getting more creative. You know, having subjects interact is a great way of telling a story. You know, so these are just two cubs. They're very big cubs. They're almost ready to be full adults. But these cubs, they constantly are mock fighting. They're getting ready for prime time when they're adults, and they have to do real fighting with other polar bears. And so these siblings are just having fun, but you know, it looks like two bears fighting. Actually, this one kind of amuses me. The story I see from this is that one of the bears is a psychiatrist, and the other bear is lying down on the couch and telling the psychiatrist all about its mother. So, you know, like that's the story I kind of get out of this. I don't know if other people see that. But that's the fun part of storytelling. As I said, is you just want to have something that triggers that process. And I love it when I talk about this and people tell me the stories that they see in the photos, and they're often very different from the stories that I thought I was telling. And so, you know, here's some more bears fighting, you know, waiting for that perfect moment where the activity is at its peak. You know, so here both bears have got their jaws wide open. They're coming out of the water. So, you know, much more interesting storytelling process here with these bears interacting and these dynamic poses. And here, got a mother and her two cubs, and they were walking past me when the sun was rising behind them. And so I was shooting directly into the light for this photo. And the sunlight was striking the front element of the lens, creating lens flare. And so because I was using a telephoto lens and I was shooting wide open, that flare is spread out across the entire image frame. If I had been, for example, shooting with a wide angle lens and using a small aperture, I would have gotten those little flare blobs that you see more commonly. But when you're shooting wide open with a longer lens, that flare blob you're getting that flare blob, but it's spread out across the entire image frame. And so the end result here is it gives the image this warm, gauzy look. So it kind of creates this aura of nostalgia, maybe. And so I think that the color and the low contrast created by the flare just gives this a mystical quality, a little bit of mystery injected into this photo that helps tell the story, even though the bears aren't doing anything particularly interesting. They're not fighting here, they're just walking past. But I think the color and the luminosity help trigger that emotion with the viewer. And here's another example. This is a polar bear with the sun setting behind it, and I chose a very dark exposure here. I wasn't getting that lens flare because the sun was higher in the sky, so it wasn't hitting the front element of the lens. But I chose a very dark exposure so that I'm revealing only the rim lighting of the polar bear. So it's a more abstract rendering, but it really does inject a lot of mystery into this photo, and it forces the viewer to think about it for a moment to figure out what's going on. And so I think that helps with the storytelling process. And then another thing I love doing is photographing the bears when there's snow. So snow is one of those atmospheric effects that I was talking about earlier. So atmospherics are really any sort of weather that gets in between the lens and the subject, diffuses the scene and adds a little bit of mystery. So all of the blowing snow while a mother and her two cubs are hunkering down during the blizzard tells a really great story. It's one of my favorite of my polar bear photos. These two polar bears, two siblings, once again, just big cubs, mock fighting in a blizzard. And so I like the high key presentation here. So it's kind of a study of white on white. I like the symmetry of the two bears, and the use of negative space here. I think once again, I was trying to like, bring in, I used all this extra space here because I wanted to just bring in this bleak environment around them to help tell that story. And so you can see as my storytelling process evolves, typically I'm going wider and I'm getting more abstract. Here's just another series. These are mountain gorillas taken in Rwanda, Uganda, and the Congo. And here we are with the back pocket shot. I got the nice tight portrait of the face of the silverback gorilla. And not a bad shot. I like the diagonal tilt of his head. I like the fact that he's looking off to the side a little bit, giving the viewer a little bit of side eye. So that tells an interesting story. But this is, once again, kind of a basic portrait that doesn't tell you much about the animal or the environment that it lives in. And, for all you know, it could have been taken in a zoo. And so I like these wider views that are definitely not taken in a zoo. So here, I went wider. This was a 24 millimeter shot, and this is a mountain gorilla with its family arrayed in the background. Because actually, this was pretty cool. This particular family had not one, but 4 silverback gorillas. The silverbacks are the big dominant males. And so it's kind of unusual to have so many silverbacks in one family group all working together. And so I like this wider view because it shows the entire family or part of the entire family. This was a pretty big family group, actually. So I only got part of the action here. You could definitely tell that there's one gorilla way in the back that is one of the other silverbacks. And I think the middle gorilla was a silverback as well. So I think I got 3 out of the 4 silverbacks in this shot. And then there was 2 babies that were playing with the adults. And here, this is one of those relatable poses. This gorilla looks grumpy. He does not look like he's having a good time. He's got his arms folded. My wife tells me that I'm always doing this. I've got my arms folded, and she's like, "Why are you being so grumpy?" I'm like, "What? I just got my arms folded. I'm not grumpy, but I look grumpy." So I have what is called resting jerk face. So anyone who meets me in person, if I look like I'm not having a good time or that I'm grumpy, it's not you, it's me. I just look that way. That's just my face. And this gorilla, I think, has the same problem, resting grumpy gorilla face. But in any event, the fact that he looks like he's grumpy, it tells a story. So it was a really nice moment to trigger the shutter. And this silverback was rolling around, just sort of playing in the vines. I thought this was a nice playful moment to take a shot. And I like the moment of eye contact with the gorilla here. So you can see kind of the wider view, taking in more of the environment. This gorilla was eating. And so capturing a moment where the gorilla was eating and shooting through the leaves that are in between me and the gorilla, sort of framing the gorilla, adding some depth, helping to enhance the story. And this is probably the favorite of all the gorilla photos I've taken. And this was one where I had to take an active role in telling the story. So before the first time I went to photograph the gorillas was in Rwanda. And I imagined these shy creatures just hiding in the jungle and, just getting a peek of these animals through the leaves. And it wasn't really like that. They weren't really that shy. They were kind of out in the open areas in the jungle because it was easier for them to get around in those areas. And so I was photographing them a lot in these wide open spaces. And that original story that was in my brain, it wasn't really corresponding with the reality. So I decided to impose that story on the scene. So this was a female mountain gorilla. She was on the ground eating some of the ground plants. And in between me and her was this small bush, this scraggly little bush. And so I walked up to it, and then I got down on my knees, and I got my camera really close to the leaves of the bush, and I found a gap in the leaves, and I shot through that to photograph the gorilla's face. And I shot with a short telephoto lens, and I shot wide open. And so the leaves were just a few inches away from the lens. And so because I was shooting wide open with that longer focal length, they're rendered as abstract blurs of color. And so I did this on purpose so I could create the story that was in my head. And the whole time I'm down there making this photo, so the gorilla is moving, the leaves are blowing in the wind, and I'm kneeling in the mud kind of swaying back and forth, trying to get the gap of the leaves to align with the gorilla's eyes. My guide comes up to me and says, he's like, no, 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 Mr. Ian, that's not a good place for photos. Stand up, you'll get a better view of the gorilla. So he didn't see the method to my madness. But yeah, like, as the artist, as the photographer, it's perfectly okay to control the story, to get your creative vision that's stuck in your brain out into the real world. And so you should be willing to immerse yourself in the story of your subjects and do what you can to impose your own vision of the story on what's going on. And just give me a second here to get some water. And these are some photos of gelada monkeys in Ethiopia. And these are really beautiful monkeys. They're the only terrestrial monkey species on the planet. And by that, that means that they stay on the ground all the time. They don't go up into trees. And they eat the prairie grass that's out there. So they're wandering the prairie in the highlands of Ethiopia, eating the grass. So they're like little furry cows, basically. And they've got this beautiful golden mane. I mean, they're really spectacular. And so here's the back pocket shot. Some of the gelada monkeys staring at me. This is kind of almost a see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil type of thing. They've got some nice glaring looks that they're giving the viewer. So it's not like there isn't a story in this photo, but you can see with subsequent images, I'm trying to get more creative, more abstract, go a little wider. So here I photographed one of the geladas backlit by the sun because I really wanted to get that backlighting on that beautiful golden mane that the monkey has. And with the monkey in silhouette, it's a little bit more mysterious, forces the viewer to take a deeper look. And then I was going wider with these and trying to work with multiple animals interacting. And so you've got the male and female pair here grooming each other in the foreground with the setting sun in the background. So you can see the mountains around them. It tells a story of the environment that they live in, these beautiful high elevation mountains in the highlands of Ethiopia. And then this final photo, I was trekking for several days in these mountains, and this was way, way far in the backcountry for this particular shot. And there was a troop of the geladas. What they do is they come to the edges of the cliffs that are on the sides of these mountains, and they climb down the cliffs to roost at night. And that's to protect themselves from predators. And so this was the lead male of this troop of monkeys. It was a big troop. And so he was standing on the edge while the younger males and the females went down the edges of the cliff. So he was kind of standing guard. And so I got a nice moment with him. You can see the golden mane. These are also called bleeding heart monkeys because they have these red features on their chests. So you can see that featured. So the things that were special about the subject, I made sure to display them in this photo to make sure that the viewer could see them. And I was very lucky that this male also decided to be rather demure, and he folded his arms over his private parts, so we didn't have to see those. So that was nice. It's always challenging photographing monkeys for that reason. And so, this story really came together here really nicely. And so I took this at twilight. I used a little bit of fill flash just to gently illuminate the monkey so that he stands out a bit more from the background scenery in the twilight sky. And I'm just going to share a series of lion photos. You can see the evolution. Here's the back pocket shot, a nice tight portrait of the lion. I like the backlighting here. And you can see the blood on the lion's face. And, it's not a bad photo, but once again, could be taken in a zoo. And so you can see I'm getting wider, trying to capture the subject's doing something more interesting, like this lion was on the prowl. Here, this male lion actually was he was testing the air here. So this is not a roar. This is not a yawn. This is I forget what it's called exactly, but cats have this pharonasal organ or gland or something like that. So they literally will sniff the air, and they do this. They kind of open their mouth wide so they can bring in some of the air and kind of get some sense from some pheromone sense from the air. So that's what this lion was doing, and that's pretty interesting. It looks like a mighty roar. Here's a female that had just made a kill. So there's blood on her face. That was a really good moment to tell a story. I like her really dynamic pose. Actually, what she had done is she made the kill. She was resting, and there was a male lion that was coming up to her. So I got a photo of that just a little bit later in the sequence. This is different lions in a different place. But here, the male and the female coming together. This is what I would call a relatable pose, where they were just greeting each other. But and they probably were a mating pair. I'm not sure if they were telling each other that they love each other, but that's kind of what it looks like. It looks like these two lions are in love and they're kind of kissing or whatever. And so these relatable poses are really great for telling a story. And this is that female I just showed you from the previous photo. A male came up and after she had made the kill and she was interested in feeding, he was interested in something else. And so she was letting him know that she wasn't interested in what he was interested in. And this really dynamic interaction between the two helps convey the story. And a lot of times I'm using creative light and exposure for conveying a story. So this is a pretty simple portrait of this male lion, but that beautiful golden light and the backlighting on the lion, I think makes the story more interesting, makes this much more dynamic than it was in real life. In real life, it was just a pretty subject, but he wasn't really doing anything of interest. But you bring in that golden light and that backlighting, and it just transforms the whole photo. It tells a much more interesting story. And here I'm, once again, getting creative with the backlighting, using that rim lighting effect. This rim lighting effect works great when you've got strong, colorful light. You need a lot of contrast. And it works best if you can get like a dark background behind your subject. It also works best if your subject has a recognizable silhouette, recognizable shape. So like a bear or a lion, you can tell what they are. I tried using this technique with lemurs in Madagascar. Unfortunately, a lemur looks kind of like a monkey, kind of like a cat, kind of like a raccoon. And so when you've got a lemur backlit, you can't really tell which of the three that it is. So it's a little too ambiguous. That technique didn't work very well with the lemurs, but it works great with something that's more obviously recognizable. And here I'm getting more creative with color and with light. So I shot this at twilight. I used a wide angle lens. I had this beautiful twilight sky. Actually, there was these gaps in the clouds that were just glowing with that blue twilight color. And I photographed this lion when it was pretty dark. And so my driver used a spotlight to illuminate the lion. And I waited for that mighty roar, which, as you know, is a mighty yawn, to tell this story. So, I was definitely very involved in the creative process here, choosing an exposure that would preserve the highlights in that sky, but that would also render the landscape around the lion in silhouette, and then having my guide put a spotlight on it so that you could see the lion. And it created that contrast with the beautiful blue sky above, and then just waiting for the proper moment. So I think with people and wildlife, storytelling is probably pretty obvious. But what about when you're photographing landscapes, for example? So what do I do to tell a story when I'm making landscape photos? So the first thing I do is I think about the landscape that I'm photographing. I think about the features of the landscape that are unique, that make it special. So I catalog all those features and I try to incorporate those in my photos. And I will use atmospheric events, weather events to help bring the landscape to life. And I'll often incorporate a person into my landscape shots, creating that proxy for the viewer. And I'm also just always trying to make the most dynamic compositions I can, because that engages that primal visual response from the viewer. And so that's another way of making a connection with them. And so this is a photograph from the redwoods of California. And to me, one of the most magical things that happens in the redwoods is when you get some fog. Fog in the redwoods can be beautiful, especially if it's thin fog and you've got sunlight shining through the fog. So the fog scatters the sun, creating these beautiful sunbeams. And honestly, once you've photographed redwoods in the fog, you don't want to go back to just normal photography in the redwoods. It's pretty boring. So fog is just so magical and so mysterious. It is the perfect atmospheric weather event to really bring the story of the redwoods alive. And with sand dunes, Wind is the weather event that helps tell the story of the dunes. Once again, once you photograph sand dunes in a sandstorm, you never go back to photographing sand dunes on a normal day. It's just so magical. All the blowing sand brings the dunes to life. It makes it look like a seething, living thing. Excuse me. I think I needed to take a bit more Dayquil. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, I just love working in these really dramatic conditions. This is a photo taken from a sandstone cave along the south shore of Lake Superior in Michigan. And in winter, water seeps through the sandstone and forms this rime ice over the entire caves. So they become these ice caves. And I wanted to add some visual interest. So I asked, this was one of my workshop clients who wore this bright orange jacket and regretted it because we constantly were asking him to pose for us.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was great. It was great to have him there to create some color contrast, to create some visual juxtaposition between the icicles that were close to the lens and him being farther away. Those icicles, by the way, are just very tiny. They're not very large at all. But I was very, very close, like inches away with my wide angle lens. So that makes them look big. And I did that to enhance the story. I wanted the icicles to look like they were looming over this person. I wanted them to look huge. So I created this forced perspective effect. And having that color contrast just makes the whole thing more visually interesting. But yeah, he serves as a proxy for the viewer. The viewer can imagine that they are him wandering around, looking up in awe at these features. And for this photo, I took of the volcano in Iceland that's been erupting on again, off again over the past few years. This is a drone photo looking straight down into the volcanic crater. So there's a lava lake that's in the crater. You can see lava on the sides of the crater from a previous eruption. And you can see that there's some lava bubbling in the middle of the lava lake. So the next eruption is coming. So basically every few minutes, this thing would erupt and would be spraying magma out for a few minutes. And then it would kind of quiet down. And then the pressure would build up again and it would go off again. And with the color contrast here created by photographing this at twilight so that there's blue light on the landscape around that bright red magma, I'm creating that warm, cool, complementary color scheme that is very vibrant and dynamic. But also, I wanted this photo to be abstract on purpose. And to me, it looks like the eye of a dragon, though other people have told me that they think this looks like a heart. And either way, it's great. Like if people see a dragon, see a heart, or they see something else, that means I've done my job. I've triggered their curiosity. I've given them enough story cues that they can create their own story. One of the places that I like doing landscape photography the most is Badlands National Park in South Dakota. And I run my landscape masterclass workshops out there every summer during the summer storm season. And then I do night sky masterclass workshops there in September. And so what I love about the Badlands is the texture of the landscape. That you got all of these claystone layers that are eroding and being revealed by the erosion. And so this soft claystone has got all these really intricate erosion patterns in it. And so the erosion is creating these patterns and revealing all these beautiful colors. And then you get these amazing stormy skies in May, June, July, and August when the monsoon is working over the Great Plains. And that's, to me, the time when the Badlands really becomes an amazing place for photography. And so what I'm trying to do is to create a marriage between land and sky. So I'm finding all these interesting colors and textures in the landscape and waiting for those really dramatic weather events because it really brings the Badlands to life. And it tells a unique story about this incredible, inspiring landscape. And so I'm constantly on the hunt for these dynamic visual designs and these beautiful stormy skies. I mean, I just get the most amazing sunsets and sunrises there every time I go. And often I get, great atmospheric events like lightning or beautiful sunsets. And, every time I go, I find something different. I find some new aspect of the landscape, some new story to tell of this dynamic, ever changing landscape. And so I just absolutely love finding these stories and sharing them with people. This is a great example of the kinds of skies I see there all the time, beautiful rainbows, these gorgeous clouds, storm clouds at sunset. For this photo, I knew that I had these strong curving shapes in the sky created by the cloud and by the rainbow. So I wanted to find a curving shape to complement and mirror those shapes. And so I found this white stripe of claystone, this layer of white that was eroded. And as the hill erodes at an angle, it takes this otherwise very flat horizontal layer and gives it a dynamic shape. So here it's this curve of the white stripe, leading the viewer from foreground to background. And so, those are just some of the ways that I tell stories with my wildlife and with my landscape photos. And just to leave you with a few parting thoughts, keep in mind that when you just point your camera at something interesting and take a snapshot, that's showing the world what your camera sees. But your job as an artist is to show the world what you see by using composition, color, light, exposure, and the magic of the moment to express your creativity and share your artistic vision with the world. And I like to say that a photograph should say as much about the artist as it does about the subject, because it's really all about telling your story, sharing your creative vision. So that's the final story that you're telling when you're making photos. You're not just telling the stories of your subjects, you're also telling your story as an artist, which leaves me with just one final question. What's your story? That's what each and every photographer needs to figure out. What is their story? What's their vision of the world and how to share it with others? And so if you want to learn more about my work or to learn more from me, you can go to my personal website, ianplant.com, or you can head over to my photo education platform, photomasters.com, where you can or you can watch my free photography webinar. There's also lots of free materials and premium materials to help you become the best photographer that you can be. And I also would invite you to join me. I've got a bunch of workshops and tours. You can find those either on ianplant.com or photomasters.com. But in particular, I like to invite people to my Badlands masterclasses. Landscape masterclass in May, where I would say it's the storm chasing masterclass, but when you're in the Badlands, you don't chase the storms. The storms chase you. It's kind of like a storm bowling alley. So it's just amazing when you get these dramatic storms coming in. And so I try to time my landscape masterclass for that, the beginning of the summer storm season. And then I also do a nightscape masterclass in September. The storms usually have died down by then, and you get some beautiful night skies. Great place to see the Milky Way. It's got some really nice dark skies, especially in September. So thank you very much for watching my presentation. I'm now happy to answer any questions.
I don't
Ian.
understand. Every time I go to South Dakota, I get 100 plus degrees and just sun, no clouds, sun beating on me. And I am there May, July, and August of every year.
Well, I think the answer is you need to go with me because I've got weather magic.
I am.
Jeez.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, you can get that. You can have these periods where the storms aren't working. I mean, usually during the summer there, especially in the Badlands, the summer heat is what triggers the storms. And so it's very, very unusual when I'm there in the summer where I'll usually try to go for a few days because the storms don't happen every day. Yeah. But usually if you're there for 4 or 5 days, you're going to get some storms. Though it sometimes doesn't happen. It's all up to the weather gods, I suppose.
Don't come with me because I'm right in Kadoka, so I am right there.
And you're right there.
I am right there. I get nothing. I get sun beating on me all day.
Yeah, that's the worst.
So anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Beautiful photography. Thanks for sharing with us, Ian. Some of those shots of gorillas and orangutans, It looked like you were pretty close. In fact, at one point you said I'm on wide angle, and yet 24 millimeters or so. And so anyway, how close were you to some of these animals? Looked
Yeah,
like pretty
sure.
close.
Sure. So with the gorillas, wherever you go, depending, all three countries are pretty much the same. The rule is that you're not supposed to get within, I think, 7 meters of the gorilla, so like roughly 21 feet. But the gorillas don't always get the memo, and so often the gorillas will come closer to you.
Okay.
And if the guides can move you back safely, they will do it. But sometimes they can't. Sometimes there might be stuff blocking your way. And so the guides just tell you that if the gorillas get closer, that just have fun with it. But be careful. You're supposed to like avert your gaze and be non-threatening, and they'll back you up when they can. So some like with the gorillas, most of my shots were taken with longer lenses, though on occasion I was closer and was able to go with a wider angle lens. I had one occasion where a big silverback decided to walk right by me, and I was right next to my guide, and we couldn't move back. And so my guide's like, just stand here, look down, be non-threatening. And so the gorilla passed within about a foot of me. It was so close I could smell the gorilla.
Yeah.
And the gorilla looked at me and then looked at my guide and then shoved my guide over onto the ground and then walked on. And so they tell you this. The gorillas aren't violent. They're not really aggressive, but they like to show their dominance, and they might give you what they call a friendly shove. And that's what they did with the guide. He was unharmed. He came right back up just laughing about it. And I was so jealous in that moment because I really wanted to include on my professional resume pushed over by a silverback mountain gorilla. So it's an amazing experience. But yeah, usually you're probably more like 20 or 30 feet away from the gorillas. So usually I'm shooting with a longer lens. With the orangutans, if you go to Borneo, there's a bunch of national parks in Borneo where they have these feeding platforms. And they feed the orangutans. And so you can often get relatively close. They come in. They try to, the rangers are there and they try to keep everyone, a little bit farther away from the orangutans. But you can definitely still get some interesting close encounters. In Sumatra, where I've gone to do some of my orangutan photography, there is a national park there, but it's like defunct. There's like national park administration buildings that clearly haven't been occupied for about 40 years and are being reclaimed by the jungle. And so it's a totally different experience there. And so often the orangutans will come close. They'll be swinging by on the trail. So I've actually had some close encounters with the orangutans there, where I've been able to use wide angle lenses. And so even a few of the photographs I was shooting with fisheye lenses, just to get some creative curvature in the background. So it's getting close encounters with wildlife is not common. I actually get some close encounters like with lions in Africa because I'm in a safari vehicle, and sometimes the lions come right up. So some of my lion photos were actually wide angle shots, like the one I showed you with the twilight sky and the spotlight on the lion. So that was actually a 16 millimeter shot. So you're often very, very close. And there's other places in the world where the wildlife is very approachable, where the wildlife isn't scared of people. But obviously, when you're close with wildlife, you got to be careful because wild animals can be unpredictable. You don't want to disturb the animals. I'm certainly not. I don't want to like be chasing animals with my wide angle lens. So I try to avoid disturbing the animals whenever I can. But if I have an opportunity to take out the wide angle and the subject is comfortable with me and I'm able to use the wide angle, I love using it because it tells a more interesting story, I think, bringing in a lot of those visual elements that surround the animal, telling the story of the environment that it lives in, having a more visually dynamic composition. These are all things that are hallmarks of my work.
Talk about getting close. Did you see the video of Botswana where these tourists were out with some guides in a boat in the Okavango Delta, and they got too close to a female elephant with her calves,
Mm.
And she basically charged him and dumped the boats, and people ended up in the water. Nobody got hurt, but
Yeah.
there are risks.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that video, but you definitely hear stories about it. And so it's, usually when you're working with good guides, that's what they're there to do is to protect you from that happening. And so I don't know whether it was whether the guides weren't very good and were being too dangerous, or whether it was just, a freak accident that happens as well. I remember being on a safari once in Zambia where we were crossing a small river, and this big male hippo charged us that we didn't see, like a guide didn't see him. And it turns out the hippo wasn't charging us. The hippo was chasing a smaller male, and they were coming kind of in our direction. So it freaked us all out for a while. And that was just a freak accident, like the guide was really good and was trying to avoid those sorts of encounters. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly always risks with wildlife or landscape photography. You get yourself into some bad places. You just got to be smart and be careful about it, and always have a backup plan because there have been times when I've had something go wrong, and so I always make sure I've got some sort of exit plan so that if things go wrong, I can extricate myself, get myself to a safe area.
Thank you.
Ian, I have a question about the progression from the back pocket photos to the storytelling. Are there any specific techniques or inspirations that got you to think in a different manner or way?
Well, yeah, I mean, so growing up photographically, I always saw a lot of work from National Geographic photographers. And so I think that kind of planted the seed in my mind about how one should be doing nature photography. Um, and certainly, National Geographic was a storytelling publication. So the techniques that the photographers used there, or at least the images that were put in the magazine, would have that strong storytelling emphasis. And I think part of it also was that when I was when I was kind of doing my first forays into wildlife photography, for example, I just didn't think that the photos I was taking were very exciting. And so I was just looking for ways to push the creative envelope. I don't think that maybe in the beginning I was thinking specifically about telling stories, but at some point I realized that's what I was trying to do. And that so these attempts to be more creative, didn't really know what I was doing, just sort of guided by intuition. But at some point I realized, oh yeah, what I'm trying to do is tell a more interesting story. And certainly it's the same sort of epiphany I had with my landscape photography. Just in the beginning, I just didn't feel like my photos were that interesting. I just didn't feel like they had a sense of place. And, I wanted to make sure that when viewers were looking at my landscape photos, excuse me, this cold is kicking my butt, that they had a sense for the experience that I was having. It wasn't, just enough to make a pretty photo. I wanted the viewer to have a vicarious experience. I wanted them to understand what it was I was experiencing. And so that's what kind of triggered me to rely more on incorporating interesting weather and things like that to better tell the story of the landscape I was photographing.
Did you find that you were taking the time to observe the scenario more than the excitement of, oh, there's this species and I want to snap the photo?
Yeah, that hits the nail right on the head. I think that to effectively tell a story, you need to immerse yourself in the story of your subject. You need to study it more, observe more, understand its rhythms and its mannerisms. And so, whether it's a landscape or a wildlife subject or anything else, just taking the time to work with the subject and to get to know it pays off huge creative dividends.
Thank you.
Another question here. As time has gone on, I've begun to use more video in addition to stills, and find that videos really help to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge, though, is to share that with other people because it takes more work, and you can show somebody some pictures, but to share is difficult. But sometimes, I just think combining stills together with some relevant video clips really helps tell the story.
Yeah, I mean,
Or do any of that yourself?
yeah, so I don't really do much video myself. And in some ways, video makes it maybe a bit easier to tell a story because you can actually show the story unfolding. Um, but it also kind of locks you into the story a bit more than with a still photograph, where you've got more creative liberties to just modify the story or manipulate the story through the photographic process for the viewer. But I think that at their core, the storytelling process is very similar. And so I think the key to unlocking more creative stories with video is to use a lot of the techniques that I'm using to unlock more creative stories with my photographs. So getting really creative with light, and thinking kind of about the composition, thinking about the visual elements that are going to appear in the video, can make the stories a bit more dramatic and dynamic. So yeah, I think um, I think some of the challenges are unique between the two, but some of the challenges are very similar.
Anybody else?
Excellent presentation. Thank you, Ian.
Oh, thank you, everyone. I've had a great
Yeah.
time and wonderful questions. So thanks for that as well. I like lots of back and forth, and you guys have given me some good questions to talk about.
Well,
Sign your T-shirt.
Please don't make me.
Please don't make me do stuff. This is my I'm feeling sick T-shirt. So
Plus 4 lines for $90 with no trade-in.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
no.
very much for pulling through to talk to us. It was very interesting, your approach. I enjoyed it.
well, thank you so much. It's been great connecting with you all, and I hope to see you again, either virtually or even better in real life. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ian. I really appreciate it. And yeah, you opened up my eyes for explaining how to tell the big story. So thanks
Okay.
again.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Get better.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Elizabeth,
Ooh,
it's all up to you now.
great. That's what I want to hear.
How do you like following that?
I don't want to follow that at all. Hold on. My mouse is being weird. Oh, that's the problem. Okay. No, I don't want that either. How do I get a full screen? There we go. Okay. So, thanks for putting that together, Jeff. It was fun to do 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I
Alright.
didn't mean to do it that way, but that's how it sort of worked out. So
Yeah, but they tied well together too. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, let's see. We have a field trip to Shalom. Do we have a date for that yet? It says TBD. So I don't know that we have a date. I don't know who was putting that together. Was that Linnea?
Yeah, I sent information like in August and didn't know if people were interested or not. And so it was just at our executive meeting. So I definitely can put something together if people are interested.
Yeah, have you seen all the trouble that's going on with them?
No.
There's lawsuits now with the neighbors complaining about them, and it's
So you're saying we better go quick?
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Hopefully not. It's yeah. New neighbors moved in, they don't like them, and they say, well, we don't want you in our backyard now. Well, the zoo was there before the neighbors moved in, so
Yes, I don't think they have a leg to stand on, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would put something together if people are interested.
All right. Do we want people to raise their hands if they're interested? Their virtual hands?
Yeah, please. Yes, please.
1, 2. Oh boy. Oh, look, there's
there-
plenty.
Yeah, you got 6 or more, 8,
Yeah.
8 or so people or more.
Okay, I'll look at, and I would take it with the weather. Should we still try for October? Nearing the end of October, or are people more interested in Christmas? I know they're putting up their Christmas, but I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared to tell you anything.
Okay. I don't know, did we have a Christmas light already planned? Looking, hang on.
We don't really have anything planned.
No, we
That
just
might
have a
be something
DVD for
different if they've got
lights.
Christmas lights to go there during Christmas. Yeah.
It'll be fun to see the tiger babies as soon as possible while they're still tiny.
Were they born already?
Oh yeah, they're like 6 weeks old now. And they're
Oh,
starting to explore, and they're so cute.
all right.
Are they white tigers?
There's one white, one gold, and 2 normal.
Okay, because I thought there was a birth of some white tigers that were there this year.
They're open every day from 9 to 5.
Yeah, I don't have any suggestions because I don't have any time, so I can't help.
Yeah, I
Well,
can't.
I guess if I get the information together and put through a couple of dates, can we do it through email?
Sure.
Okay, I'll do that then. And then next week or so, I'll get something out.
All right. Let's see. I'm looking for
I
something.
think
that
you
Ellen
said,
talked-
Linnea, that if we get there through October, you get a Cedar Creek ice cream.
Oh my
If that's
gosh,
incentive
what a
for
great
anybody
memory.
to go or not.
I'll include that in my notes. I'll confirm.
Well, I'll talk with you too, so. But no, I have mobility issues now, so it's difficult for me to get, to walk around a lot of places, so.
You know, you can rent a golf cart, and you can also do car loads of people as well. I'll put that
Oh,
all in, like including the prices, like for
Yeah,
renting.
okay.
a golf cart.
Okay, all right.
All right. So we can talk about before we start image sharing. Next month, we are looking for people. We will be doing image processing, making editing more normal. We're looking for 7 to 8 members to discuss their post-processing to get an image ready for competitions. Are we asking those people to just show their edited image and talk through what they did and what they used, or are they going to actually be editing?
They can talk through what they did. If they want to actually show it, they can show it as
Okay.
well. I'll pick an image out of my files and send it to whoever wants to do it. Usually we do 6 to 8 people.
All right. Do you want us to let you know if we'll do it? Do we want people to raise their hands now? And
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice if I know now who wants to do it so that I
Right.
can make sure I get the image to them with enough time for them
is it going to
to.
be a complicated thing because we're trying to make it kind of normal?
What we want to do with this one is that we have gotten away from what a normal image would look like, and last time we got really crazy with it, and we really want this to be, how would you normally process this image to make it stand out?
All right, then I'll do that.
And to make it an award-winning image that you'd be proud to show.
A competition worthy
Yeah.
image, yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
So it looks like I see Jim Karofsky. I got you, Elizabeth.
You put me last, so if you have too many, you can take me off.
Okay. I got Ian,
Jim Bauer.
Jim Bauer, Bernard. Let's see. Thought I saw one more. Okay, Pat Lynch. Who am I missing here? Oh, Leonid. Okay. So let's see if that's, how many do I have? 5. Looks like we got more than enough here. 4, 5. Yeah, I've got 7 people. Ellen, is that about what you counted?
That's what I counted.
Okay.
1, 2,
Great.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I have 7.
Is there any particular type image we'd like to do? I always struggle to figure out what to pick from. Should I do I could do a flower because I got stuff from Chicago Botanical Gardens or the Sunflower Farm, something like that. Would we be interested in seeing that? Or I got stuff from the Smoky Mountains or up in, Munising area.
Can you send us a flower and a Smoky Mountains and we can pick one?
Sure.
Just 'cause I don't know how good I'd be at a flower.
Okay.
As you all will see later.
I saw one neat flower, so.
All right, so then I think we have more than enough.
Okay.
And show and tell then in November is Patty and Jane. And then on November 22nd, we have the folk fair field trip. So and for October, the President Challenge is whimsical.
Whimsical.
Yes.
Elizabeth,
That means yes.
I just would like to say a word about dues.
Oh yeah, I think I owe still, don't I?
People, please, you can get your dues in either mailed or through the website. Website's very, very easy. I've gotten 26. I got 2 tonight, so I got 28 so far out of, I think it's 58. So
Is that in Ellen, is that in this latest newsletter you sent out?
yeah, she had it in there.
Okay, so I'll find it because I haven't paid yet.
And it works because I tried to do it before the meeting tonight, but I ran into an error, so I will do it after the meeting tonight.
All right.
Please do it online because it makes it easier for all of us if you can do it online over a check.
Yep.
And if we'll be doing a cutoff where I will start dropping Zoom attendees very soon. We normally start dropping people after November 1st. We'll maybe go a little bit more into November, but we need to get those dues in. Some of these speakers are starting to get a little more expensive than what they used to be. Ian, for one, was a little bit more than what we normally spend, but so we need the money to keep the quality speakers coming in.
All right. Do either you or Ken want to give Wacko updates?
I can give a Wacko update, although Ken may have to help me a little bit. Wacko competition due date is this coming weekend, Sunday night at midnight. So get your images in. It's been rather light this season, so we'd really need you to get your images in, especially in the new creative section. Creative just means that it's creative and that some of the stuff is not your own, just like in past the creative section that was in there. So we really want to see that one keep going. The two special sections is the open special section is tabletop, and the nature special section is I forget.
Animals.
Animals. I knew, because it's two subjects that I don't have any images for. So, please get your images in. I know this club always enters quite a bit, but we want to make this another good competition. And of course, the final round of judging will be shown online on the first Saturday in November. And you can, anybody that enters will normally get an email from me with the link for watching that competition. If you haven't entered and you still would like to watch, send me an email and I will send you a link. We still have to set up that competition link, but we'll have it done very soon. With that, let's see. There's nothing else with Wacko. Unfortunately, the Birds of Prey have been canceled due to not enough turnout. And as far as I know, there's nothing new from the program committee. PSA chapter will be meeting in November. If you're interested in joining another group, that group holds 4 meetings a year. We have a number of good speakers. The November meeting is talking about postcard photography because the PSA chapter is going to start a postcard competition. I'm up to over 12 hours today. My mind is not working well, so I'm running in weird order. Digital forum for October is going to be Hazel Meredith with Creativity with Your Smartphone. And then in November, I have Phil Itea talking about 4 fabulous ways for processing your image. I'm working on a bunch of others. I'm curious, are you interested in more phone photography speakers at all? I did find a guy, actually Ken found him for me, a Rad, and of course Rad Drew, and I may be bringing him in for Digital Forum. I'm also considering him for our camera club if we want somebody else that talks about phone photography. He has quite a few interesting cell phone talks that he'll give. His biggest problem is he's $300 a talk. So I want to make sure that we have enough people interested to spend $300. We normally spend $150 to $200. Ian's been normally is my top end guy that I've been going to, and he's $250. This Rod Drew is $300, and I'm trying to decide if he's worth, an extra $50 or $100 that we normally would spend.
I'll say I know Rad. I taught with Rad this summer at Chicago. Rad's awesome, and he does do a ton of stuff with cell phones. He does a lot of infrared stuff. He does infrared cell phones.
Yeah.
So at least from a quality standpoint, I'll vouch he's very good.
I'm
not surprised he's expensive.
Is that iPhone only?
No, cell phones in general.
Just smartphones, I believe. So, well, I'm going to look at them for Digital Forum sometime next year because I'm still pretty empty for 2026. For our club, we do have Lisa Langell is going to do a talk in April, but I've got February and March that I'm trying to fill spots for yet. So.
No, Jeff. I think February Influences and Limitations as a creative tool with Daniel Gregory.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I don't have my sheet up, so.
Okay. And the Heart of the Photograph on March by David Duchemin.
Yeah, that's a free one where it's just a video that we're playing. So I'm trying to replace that with an actual talking speaker. He's my backup.
Okay, because I think we still have. Oh, my brain froze. May to fill too, if I'm not mistaken. And I might bring up Jim Kowalski again as far as his talk that he gave at Digital Forum a couple months ago, which was really good. So I don't know if you want to consider him or not. I don't want to put you on the spot right now, either you, Jeff, or Jim, but I found that very interesting.
I'll try to get Michael Anderson too. Remember Michael Anderson does like the light photography? He's up in the Minneapolis area.
Okay.
So I did talk to him in that, and then he mentioned about talking to him again right at the beginning of the year.
Okay, so we just have those two then.
So March and May.
March and May we have openings for. So Clint, if you can let me know, because I don't want to start asking somebody else and then all of a sudden we get, two
More
people on one day.
No, correct.
But I'll look at getting back to Red and maybe pick out one of his. He had quite a few interesting subject matters with smartphone photography, and I mean that's the phone you carry around the most. So it'd be
maybe
interesting.
consider 2026 also. I also want to ask, you collected the images for the PSA Club showcase already?
We're
not quite completed that yet. So
okay.
We're going to show the ones that are going to be submitted. We'll show them at the November meeting. We're still working on that because Ken's been traveling and I've been busy. So we haven't narrowed down to almost what we want to submit, but
well, I just put some of this stuff down as I think of it. Otherwise, Lord knows it gets lost on some of my sticky sheets, and I will find them, maybe 3 months from now, which is probably too late.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I put it in the newsletter.
Yeah.
It's a newsletter / reminder.
We were trying to get it done for this meeting, and I had World War II to work on, or World War I to work on, and I never got around to finishing it.
No excuse. This is a no excuse, so we don't care. We eventually get things done, so I wouldn't worry
We get it
about
done sooner or later.
The dues are due. The dues are due.
Yeah.
Do.
And one of these days we'll maybe get a logo too.
Yeah, I know. Don't bring that up. I was hoping you would bypass it, but I'm trying to get all the comments together before I send them off to the other members, because there were some good information that was written on the sheets at the picnic. But I am not going to make that decision by myself. So now that I'm maybe amongst the living a little bit more, God, I've been having some vertigo issues. So it's like, why now? Old age is not great. So I will get that.
Spinning, it's like being on a carnival ride all day long. I know.
I don't care.
Yeah, it helps to stick one leg out and put it on the floor to stop the spinning.
Okay, so Elizabeth, I think that's got us up to show and tell.
You want to do show and tell first?
Yeah, why don't we do show and tell first, and I can do the president's thing. The president's one was pretty short, so.
Yeah.
I can go.
All right, I didn't see who was speaking.
It sounded like Sid. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Go
Well,
for it, Sid.
This is my first time on a slideshow, so let's hope I can get
Now,
this.
Sid, when you hit share screen, there's 2 check marks you got to do. One
Share
for
sound.
share sound and for video, optimize for video.
Okay, did that.
Yep. Then pick whatever screen you're going to share. If you only have one screen, it makes it easy. It's the desktop, and then you're set to go. Hit share.
All right, and then share. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You see it?
Yeah, it's getting there, I think. Right now we got a blank brown screen. It says you're sharing, so.
It should say photo classes.
Nope, it's just blank. Did you
stop share? Okay,
yeah.
Share.
Make sure it's your desktop and not a particular app.
Oh, it's an app.
Yeah, just do the desktop so that we can see it. You only have one screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, then just choose your desktop, the
All right,
main
let's try
screen.
it this way.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
No. Try clicking on your app and see what happens. I'm not sure why we're not seeing anything.
Your
Can you
screen sharing is paused.
Are you on an Apple or a Mac or a PC?
Windows.
Windows. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, now click your whatever movie it is.
Oh, there's nothing else, so I just
You see a bunch of stuff on there?
We did for a second, and then it went back to just a blank screen.
You don't see anything. All right, stop share. All right, share.
I'm not as good with Windows because I never know what the steps are for Windows. Okay, yeah, now photo classes I have attended. Now we got it.
Okay, good. I unclicked optimize. I don't know why,
okay.
But
that's
okay.
Weird.
So I've attended several photo workshops, and I've taken photos from these and put them together. And so can you hear me well enough?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so let me know if the music plays when I start here.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. So the first one was in Maine, in Acadia National Park. John Slonina is a photographer I went with. So you're seeing it okay now?
Yep.
Then we went to this island off of Maine called Micaiah Seal Island Bird Sanctuary. It's actually part of Newfoundland. About a 2-hour boat ride. Puffins, razorbills. Glacier National Park with backcountry journeys. A little closer to home, this is a workshop I took in Door County with 4 Elements photography. Our friend Hazel Meredith went on her Barns and Back Roads workshop in Tennessee. several trees growing out and through an old car. Last of all, just in August, I took an astrophotography workshop with Brian Hansel in Grand Marais, Minnesota. I learned a lot from him. Close it out, a sunset in Croatia.
Very nice, Sid.
Thank you.
Oh, those are great pictures. Gave me a bunch of
I'm
ideas.
just curious, Sid, over how many years was that? That wasn't just this year, was it?
No, the first one in Maine was about 2018, and then it went through this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Bernard?
Okay. Well, with Ian Plant wanted us to tell stories, so I will tell some war stories from war reenactments that I've been to. Okay, so from the Revolution, on this one, they have people getting are in period clothes, a small camp. And here they have the soldiers getting ready for battle, kind of a small regiment. There are instructions on the floor. The interesting story behind this picture is the soldiers fighting in the war drove from Boston and parked in off the battlefield. Okay, here they're shooting at the enemy. And this one with everyone shooting kind of shook the ground, so I was lucky to hold the camera steady. The war between the states, Civil War. Here you have another camp. In these, I do black and white so that it looks more like they would have been taken there after the invention of the camera and or photography in the 1840s. And here we have people lining up, the army. Here they're in battle. And of course, no Civil War picture would be complete without a Matthew Brady type photo of the dead soldiers on the battlefield. And here's World War I from last weekend. There's people in period clothes. Here's a guy that what he does is show the pigeons, because they were using a lot of pigeons for to carry messages there in that war. And these guys represent the Russian army who would be having or joining World War I, but then going on to their own revolution. And this guy represents a field doctor with a lot of his tools, and the stories that they tell on how they use some of them can get kind of spine tingly. This guy has some pilots, and for this one, hat tip to Jim Karofsky, who talked the guys into dressing up and doing some interesting things that I was able to piggyback on to make the scene look more authentic. And this guy is getting his soldier ready for battle. As you can see, that was a stressful time because these young men look like they've aged about 40 years. Here's more people in period clothes holding guns. And this is from the battle where they had a lot of machine guns. And in trench warfare, on they're to simulate the trench warfare. And if you look real close at this part of Europe that they were fighting in, it was very similar to where the revolution was fought in this country. And here there's more guys running from end of battle, and this guy was simulating an injury, and officer Red Cross looking at him. And during the reenactment, that just seemed so authentic that the girl or girlfriend, wife, or significant other, the guy who was playing hurt, got really shook up and thought he was hurt for real. And then the war to end all wars didn't stick, so we had World War II. These guys sitting around between battles. And the Jeep played a lot on some of these. If you overexpose them, it kind of makes it look like how the pictures would have been taken by the soldiers. There's a battle scene, and this here is the house that is decorated in 40s and a car sitting by it. Although the car, if you're a car enthusiast, you could notice that the taillights look more like a post-war car than the early 40s. And then there's more of the battle reenactment. I don't know how much of the battle was fought around buildings. And here's more camp photos, and inside the building, and another outside the camp, and people in period clothing, 48 Star flag. And then at the this one here, the are simulating the announcement of the victory in Europe. So that would always mean the war is over. And that's what I have.
Nice.
Very good, Bernard. Bernard, was some of that shot at the Ozaki Pioneer Village?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a neat village too.
Yeah, the Civil War ones seem to have more participants, so then they have a larger battle and more people in it. Because when you get to like the Revolution, you only have 10, 12 guys that are lined up in it, and kind of takes away from how big it actually was and the impact that it had.
Yeah. No, depending on the weekend, these reenactors are doing this stuff all across a couple state areas, so sometimes things get a little thin.
Yeah. Although the guys from last weekend seem to be, say, really knowledgeable about the war. And, for being 110 years ago, the stories that they tell are as if their fathers or uncles were in it, and even though you would add a grand or a great to the title to get of the guys who were actually there. And they were telling the stories that get handed down.
Yeah, they really care about it quite a bit more than some of the other reenactors. World War I is not as popular of a reenacting time period, and they're trying to get it better. But we found that, a lot of people, they had a lot of knowledge that they passed on to a lot of people over the weekend. So, at least for us. But no, that was neat.
Those are cool. I enjoy watching them, looking at those, because I don't ever get to them. So.
Well, they're close, Elizabeth.
I know they are. It's very people-y out there, though.
Well, I'm even closer, and I don't get any shots from it, so it's pretty bad.
Yeah. All right. So for President's Challenge, which was basically how I spent my summer, we have images from Linnea, Bernard, and myself. And Jeff
and
put
me.
that together. Oh, you
threw
put
some too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did some too. I needed to make it a little longer than it was.
than a minute and a half.
Yeah. Okay.
thanks to those who participated and to Jeff for putting that together. It is on my list to learn how to do that.
One of these days I'll show you.
All right. What are you using for that?
Also, I just want to say in the newsletter now there, Elizabeth, there's a link to both you and I under the President's Challenge, because I ended up getting the photos and then I ended up forwarding them to you. But this way people can directly click on the link and send you the images.
Okay.
Because I'm still working on my internet.
Well, yeah, and that last time with my pretty much crashing my other Mac, it wouldn't have been good to send them to me. So, but I'm up and running on the new one.
Okay. All right.
All right. Anyway, Jeff, what do you use?
I use Lightroom.
Really?
Lightroom Classic with the slideshow module,
And you can put
just-
music on that?
Yep.
Oh, I could learn that easier than iMovie probably.
Oh yeah, it's took me about 20 minutes to do
Oh,
yesterday.
all right. I'll look into that then.
Yeah, it's just you need to get the right music, so you got to go to YouTube and get the music from them, and then you're
All right. We'll
all
work on
set.
it. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I use the title spot. You can pick a area, and then I just put the person's name in there, and then that goes in, pops it up on each image. So
Okay. I'll look.
that's the most time-consuming part of the whole project.
Yep. All right. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share or talk about? If not, we could call it.
We're right at time too.
I know. It's a good thing.
It's amazing.
All right. Well, everyone have a great night and a great month. I'll see you all in a month.
All right.